call came on a Tuesday morning, and Naomi almost didn't answer it. She was running late for her shift at the hospital, pulling her lanyard over her head with one hand while her other hand searched for her keys in the bottom of her bag. Her phone buzzed twice on the kitchen counter. She glanced at the screen. An unknown number, but a Canadian area code. Ontario, like hers. She almost let it go to voicemail. She almost did. She answered it. "Is this Naomi Asante?" The voice on the other end was a woman, older, with a careful tone that people use when they are about to deliver news they are not sure how to carry. "Yes. Who is this? My name is Sandra Obi. I work with St. Joseph's Community Outreach in Hamilton. We have a woman here. She was brought in 2 nights ago by one of our street volunteers. She hasn't been able to tell us much, but she had a piece of paper in her coat pocket, a folded piece of paper with your name and number on it." Naomi stopped moving. "What was her name?" she asked. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. A pause. She told us her name was Mama Vera. Naomi had left Hamilton 9 years ago with 2 suitcases, a scholarship letter from the University of British Columbia, and a promise she made to her mother standing in the driveway of the house on Barton Street. She had pressed her forehead to her mother's and said, "I will send for you. Give me 3 years. Just 3 years." Her mother, Mama Vera, had smiled the way she always smiled, with her whole face, the kind of smile that had nothing to do with whether things were going well or not. She had held Naomi's face in both hands and said, "Go, don't look back. Just go." Naomi had gone. She had finished her nursing degree in 4 years instead of 3, working overnight shifts at a care facility to cover rent, sending what she could spare back home every month. It was never as much as she wanted. $200, sometimes $300. Once, when she picked up a double shift over Christmas, she sent $800, and she remembered being almost giddy when she transferred it, imagining Mama Vera's face. After graduation, she had moved to Toronto for a better hospital placement. The money she sent home increased. Her older brother Kofi, not Kofi from the names list, her brother, was still in Hamilton, still living 10 minutes from their mother's house. He had always been the one who checked in, who stopped by on Sundays, who called Naomi with updates, or so she thought. The updates were always fine. That was the strange thing. In 9 years, everything was always fine. Mama is good. She joined a church group. She's been taking her blood pressure medication. She had a cold last month, but it passed. She keeps asking when you're coming home. The usual things. Naomi had believed every single word. She drove to Hamilton from Toronto in under an hour, which meant she was going faster than she should have been. She didn't notice. Her mind kept circling the same few images. Mama Vera in the kitchen making contomayor stew on Sunday afternoons. Mama Vera ironing her school uniform at 6 in the morning, humming something under her breath. Mama Vera standing in the driveway, smiling with her whole face. St. Joseph's Community Outreach was on the east end of Hamilton, on a street Naomi had driven down 100 times growing up, but had no reason to think much about. She parked badly, one tire on the curb, and went inside. Sandra Obi was a small woman in her late 50s with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead and a gentleness about her that immediately made Naomi feel like she might collapse. She led Naomi down a short hallway without saying much, which Naomi was grateful for. The room was small. There were 4 beds. 3 of them were empty. The woman in the 4th bed was lying on her side with a thin blanket pulled up to her shoulder. She looked smaller than Naomi remembered. Much smaller. Her hair, which had always been wrapped and pinned, was loose and white and matted at the back. Her hands, resting on top of the blanket, looked like they belonged to someone who had been working outdoors for a very long time. Naomi stood in the doorway for a moment. She could not make herself move. Then Mama Vera opened her eyes. She looked at Naomi for a long moment without expression. Then something shifted in her face. Not a smile. Something older than a smile. "Naomi," she said. Just the name, but the way she said it, the way her voice broke in the middle of it, like it had been waiting there for years, stored up. Naomi crossed the room in 4 steps and knelt down beside the bed and took her mother's hands in hers. She could not speak, she just held on. Sandra Obi came back 20 minutes later and gave Naomi a cup of tea she hadn't asked for and sat down in the chair by the window. Mama Vera had fallen asleep. Her breathing was slow and even. Naomi sat on the edge of the bed and kept her hand over her mother's. "How did she get here?" Naomi asked. Sandra laced her fingers together in her lap. "One of our volunteers does a route on Monday evenings. The west side of King Street, down toward the underpass. He found her sitting on a bench near the bus shelter. She'd been there for a while. The vendor on the corner remembered seeing her the day before." She paused. She was in a pretty bad way. Dehydrated, some early signs of hypothermia. It was a cold night. Naomi felt something tighten in her chest that had no name. "She had your number," she said, folded up in her coat pocket. The paper was old, looked like it had been there for a while. Sandra looked at her carefully. She said she didn't want to call. She didn't want to worry you. Naomi closed her eyes. She had sent money every month for 9 years, every single month. More as she earned more. She had called every Sunday. She had asked every time, "How are you? Are you comfortable? Is the house warm? Do you need anything?" And every time, the answer was "Fine, Naomi. I'm fine. We're fine." She had believed it because she had needed to believe it. "I have to call my brother," Naomi said. She stood up and walked out into the hallway and dialed Kofi's number. He answered on the second ring. "Naomi, hey, what's going on?" She kept her voice level. She had learned, over 9 years of night shifts in emergency departments, to keep her voice level when everything else was not. "I'm at St. Joseph's Outreach on the East End," she said. "I'm sitting with Mama." Silence. "What?" he said. "Then, what do you mean?" "She was found on King Street Monday night by a volunteer. She was living rough, Kofi. She was sleeping outside." The silence on the other end was different now. Something had gone out of it. "That, Naomi, that's not." "How long?" she asked. Her voice did not shake. "How long has this been happening?" She heard him exhale, a long, slow sound like something deflating. "Come meet me," she said. "Come here. We're going to talk." Kofi was 4 years older than Naomi. He had their father's height and their mother's quiet, or what she had always thought of as quiet. Now she wondered whether it had been something else, whether it had been a way of moving through the world that took up very little space, so no one would look too closely. He arrived at the outreach center 45 minutes after she called. He came in carrying a tray of coffees, which struck Naomi as so strange and so typically Kofi that she felt something cold run through her. Sandra Obi led them to a small meeting room. Mama Vera was still asleep. Naomi waited until the door was closed. "Tell me," she said. Kofi set the coffees down. He didn't sit. He stood with his hands in his jacket pockets and looked at the table between them, and he said nothing for a long moment. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," he said finally. The words landed in the room like something dropped. "What wasn't?" Naomi said. He looked up. His eyes were tired in a way that went beyond not sleeping. "I got into trouble a few years ago. About 5 years ago, he stopped. Business stuff, a deal that went wrong. I owed money." "How much money?" He said the number. Naomi heard it. She heard it very clearly. "And Mama's money," she said. Her voice was still level. She was using all of herself to keep it level. "The money I was sending home, for the mortgage, for her medication, for the groceries." She stopped. "You were taking it." He didn't look away. She gave him that. He didn't look away. "I told myself I'd pay it back," he said. "I told myself every time, next month, I'll cover it, I'll put it back. And then next month would come and I'd be short again and I'd tell myself." "How long?" she said again. He wet his lips. 4 years. Naomi sat with that for a moment. 4 years. She had been in Canada, working nights, budgeting her groceries, passing up opportunities to travel because every extra dollar went home. She had called every Sunday. She had asked every time. She had believed that she was doing something. She had believed that her mother was in the house on Barton Street, warm, fed, her blood pressure medication on the kitchen counter. "Where is Mama living?" she asked. Kofi's jaw moved. "The house was. I had to sell the house 3 years ago." He said it fast, the way people say things they have rehearsed, but not yet made themselves believe. "She was. I found her a room, in a house on the other side of town. A boarding situation. But then the landlord, he put the rent up, and I couldn't." "Stop," Naomi said. He stopped. She stood up. She walked to the window. Outside there was a parking lot, and beyond it a grey October sky and a maple tree that had lost most of its leaves. She looked at it for a long time. "Where has she been living?" she said. "For how long?" He was quiet for too long. "Kofi, since June," he said. She doesn't have a fixed address." Since June. It was October. 4 months. Naomi did the math. She tried not to think of the specifics. The cold nights, the bench by the bus shelter, the volunteer on his Monday route. She had my number in her pocket, Naomi said, still looking at the maple tree. She'd had it for years. She never called. She didn't want to worry you. Kofi said quietly. She didn't want to worry me. Naomi turned around. She was sleeping outside, and she didn't want to worry me. She walked back to the table and picked up her phone. She looked at her brother for a moment. I'm going to call a doctor, she said. I'm going to make sure Mama gets everything she needs. Then I'm going to figure out housing. And then we are going to finish this conversation. But right now I cannot look at you. She walked out of the room and closed the door quietly behind her. Mama Vera was awake when Naomi came back into the room. She was sitting up slightly, and she had her hands folded on top of the blanket, and she was watching the door. When Naomi came in, she reached out one hand. Naomi sat down and took it. I was going to call, Mama Vera said. Her voice was lower than it used to be, rougher at the edges. I told myself 1 more week, and then I'll call. 1 more week. You should have called sooner, Naomi said. She kept her voice steady, but something in it gave her away, because her mother squeezed her hand. I knew you were sending money, Mama Vera said. I didn't know where it was going, not at first. I thought, maybe the account was wrong. Maybe there was an error. And then, she stopped. She looked down at their joined hands. I didn't want you to know what your brother had become. I kept thinking he would fix it. I kept thinking he would find a way. Naomi said nothing. Don't be too hard on him, Mama Vera said. Naomi thought about 4 months on the street. She thought about June, July, August, September, October. She thought about a woman with white hair sitting on a bench in the rain because she didn't want to worry her daughter. I can't promise that, Naomi said honestly. Her mother looked at her for a moment and then did something Naomi hadn't expected. She laughed. Not a laugh of happiness, exactly. More like a laugh of recognition, of 2 women who knew each other well enough to accept the truth of a thing. Okay, Mama Vera said. Okay. The doctor's name was Dr. Patel, and she was warm and direct, the kind of doctor Naomi liked to work alongside. She went through Mama Vera's condition methodically. Mild hypothermia, now resolved, dehydration, being treated, elevated blood pressure, some signs of malnutrition and prolonged stress. She would need to stay at the center for a few days. She would need follow-up care. She would need warmth and food and, Dr. Patel said, looking at Naomi with the kind of look that passed between healthcare workers and said more than the words, she would need someone close by. She's going to be okay, Dr. Patel said in the hallway after. Thank you, Naomi said. She meant it more than she could say. She stood there for a moment after Dr. Patel walked away. She could hear, from down the hall, the low sound of a radio in one of the common rooms, and beyond that the ordinary noise of a building doing its ordinary work. She thought about her apartment in Toronto, her scheduled shift tomorrow. The money she had transferred last month, $250 to an account that had not, she now understood, connected to anything that looked like her mother's life. She took out her phone and called her bank. It took 40 minutes and 2 transfers, and a fraud department representative who was genuinely kind. But by the end of it, she had a picture of the last 4 years of transfers, and what had and had not been done with them. She sat in the car in the Outreach Center parking lot with the information she had been given, and she stayed very still for a while. Then she went back inside and asked Sandra Obi where she could find a good short-term housing support service in Hamilton. Kofi was still in the meeting room when she came back. He had not touched his coffee. He was sitting with his elbows on the table and his head in his hands, and he looked, Naomi thought, like someone who had been carrying something for a very long time and had just set it down and wasn't sure yet what the relief of setting it down felt like. She sat across from him. I want to understand one thing, she said. All those calls on Sundays, all those years. When I asked you how she was, and you said fine, what were you thinking exactly when you said that? He looked up. His eyes were red at the corners. I was hoping that I would fix it before you had to know, he said. That's the truth. I kept thinking, next month it'll be better. I'll pay it back. I'll find her somewhere decent, and then I'll tell Naomi and she'll be angry, but eventually it'll be okay. He stopped. I know that doesn't make sense. It makes a kind of sense, Naomi said, and she heard the flatness in her own voice. The kind of sense that people use to do things they know are wrong. He had no answer for that. She looked at the table. Mama told me not to be too hard on you, she said. He made a sound that was not quite anything. I'm not able to give you that right now, Naomi said. What I'm able to do is tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to move back to Hamilton. I've already spoken to my nursing coordinator, and I have a transfer request in. There's a placement available at Hamilton Health Sciences. I've known about it for 2 months and kept putting it off. I'm going to take it. She paused. I'm going to find a place big enough for Mama and me. I'm going to make sure she has what she needs. Kofi nodded slowly. Naomi said, I need time. I don't know what that looks like yet, but you are going to have to find a way to show me, not tell me, show me, that you understand what you did, not just to me, to her. I know, he said quietly. She waited on a bench in October, Naomi said. She had my number in her pocket. She waited. He pressed his lips together. He looked at the table. I know, he said again. Naomi spent 4 days in Hamilton. She slept on the fold-out couch in the Outreach Center's family visiting room, which Sandra Obi had quietly arranged without being asked. She ate from the diner across the street. She spent the mornings with Mama Vera, sitting with her while she ate breakfast, watching her regain color, watching the stiffness leave her hands as the warmth came back. On the second day, Mama Vera asked her to braid her hair. Naomi had not braided her mother's hair since she was 17 years old. She sat behind her on the bed and worked through the knots slowly and carefully, and her mother sat straight-backed and patient the way she had always sat, and neither of them spoke much. It was, Naomi thought, the quietest and the most complete she had felt in years. On the third day, she found an apartment. It was on the west end of Hamilton, on a residential street with old maples, and a corner store that had been there since before Naomi was born. 2 bedrooms, 2nd floor, a landlord named Mr. Ferreira, who had grown up in the same neighborhood, and was, when Naomi explained the situation with a brevity that she hoped conveyed the necessary seriousness, entirely decent about the arrangements. She stood in the empty living room the afternoon she signed the papers and looked out at the maple tree through the window and thought about her mother's hands on top of the blanket at the Outreach Center. She thought about the piece of paper, folded in the coat pocket, the number written in pen, the ink slightly faded, the way her mother had kept it all those months without using it, trying to protect her. She thought, I am here now. I should have been here sooner, but I am here now. Mama Vera came home, their new home, on a Friday afternoon in late October. The social worker from the Outreach Center drove her, and Naomi met them at the door. She had put a pot of soup on the stove that morning, Mama Vera's recipe, or her best approximation of it. The apartment was warm. The bedroom had a bed with good mattress and a lamp on the nightstand, and a photograph of the 2 of them from a Christmas 15 years ago, framed and set where Mama Vera could see it from the pillow. When Mama Vera walked in and smelled the soup, she stopped in the middle of the hallway and stood very still. Kontamaya, she said. I called Auntie Amma for the recipe, Naomi said. Don't tell me if I got it wrong. Mama Vera turned to look at her. Her eyes were bright. You should have called me, she said. I would have told you. You were resting, Naomi said. I'm always resting, Mama Vera said. I've been resting for months. And she walked into the kitchen and picked up the wooden spoon from the counter and tasted the soup and made a face. Too much salt, she said. I know, Naomi said. But otherwise, Mama Vera said, tilting her head, considering, not bad. Not bad at all. The conversation with Kofi took longer, weeks as it turned out. It happened in pieces, not in one sitting, which Naomi thought was probably the honest way for it to happen. He came to the apartment on a Sunday, the 3rd Sunday after Mama Vera moved in. He stood at the door holding a bag of groceries that included, Naomi noticed, all of the things her mother had always kept on the kitchen shelf. The palm oil, the dried herrings, the particular brand of oats that had been her breakfast every morning of Naomi's childhood. Mama Vera looked at the bag. She looked at her son. She said nothing for a long moment. Then she said, Come in. The door is open. Kofi sat at the kitchen table and Mama Vera sat across from him, and Naomi stayed in the living room and did not listen, because it was not hers to listen to. Whatever passed between them in that kitchen was between a mother and her son, and she had learned, in the weeks since she came home, that there were things that belonged to other people's hearts. She heard her mother's voice, low and unhurried. She heard Kofi respond, and then silence, and then her mother again. After a while she heard the sound of chairs moving. She heard the tap run. She heard the particular sound of her mother putting a kettle on the stove, the small, deliberate clunk of the kettle hitting the burner, which was the sound she had been hearing all her life, and which she had not heard for 9 years, and which she discovered now was one of the sounds she had missed most without knowing it. She did not know what would come next for Kofi. She did not know whether she could forgive him or what that would even look like. She thought it would not be a single moment but a long process, like most true things. She thought there would be better days and harder days and days when she would remember her mother on that bench and feel the cold of it go through her all over again. But she was here. Mama Vera was here. The soup was on the stove, over-salted, and the maple tree outside the window was bare now, its branches clean against the November sky, and soon enough it would be spring again, and the leaves would come back. She heard the kettle begin to whistle. She got up and went into the kitchen.